Welcome to the N1 Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Marcus Sadu, and today's episode was actually inspired by an observation that a lot of my one-on-one coaching clients came to in regards to shifting their eating habits. So I work with my clients to favor more single ingredient whole foods that they cook themselves. And as we start to implement more and more healthful foods, the not so healthful ones begin to get crowded out and consumed less often. So as you can imagine, making healthy habit shifts like this start to make you feel a lot better. So you get more energy, better sense of well-being, improved body comp, better performance, and the list goes on. And sometimes it happens where a client will go out and decide to have what some folks would call a cheat meal or a treat meal, or insert whatever word that you use here. And they report that they often feel like complete shit after they eat that meal. Now, a lot of the times they are bloated, they feel overfull, they feel super lethargic, and they come to me and say, I used to be able to eat all those foods all the time and feel totally fine. What's going on? You know when you're on a road trip and your windshield is covered in bugs and then a few more splatter on your car and you don't even really notice because your windshield is so dirty that the additional bugs just sort of blend right in? Then when you stop for gas and give your windshield a good clean and then you start driving again, you notice every bug that starts to hit your glass at first because you're working with a clean slate again. The same thing happens with food, and it's called the dirty windshield effect. So if you're eating all sorts of highly processed, highly palatable foods on a regular basis, having 3 or 4 slices of pizza for dinner is just more of the same, right? It's totally normal. But when you eat really healthfully for the vast majority of your intake, and then you include the pizza back in, you really notice its impact on how it makes you feel because you're working with a clean, quote unquote, windshield. Another example would be alcohol. If you are drinking 6 beers a night and waking up slightly sleep deprived and hungover every day, that just becomes the new normal. But if you give up booze for a month and then you drink 6 beers, first of all, your tolerance is way down. So those same 6 beers are going to give you a much stronger kick. And then also the relative hangover is going to be a lot worse because you're working with a clean slate, having not drank for 30 days prior. This also actually happens in other areas of life, like toxic relationships, for example. When you're in a relationship, it's a lot harder to see objectively because you're in the fishbowl, right? But when you separate from that person, you're able to see the ins and outs of the relationship itself a whole lot clearer. Circling back around to food, one reason why a lot of folks don't start to eat more healthfully is actually because they don't know how good they can feel. All they know is what they've been doing up until this point. So they've essentially been working with a dirty windshield their entire lives. And they might actually think that being bloated after every time they eat a meal, for example, is normal. It's not. It's common, but it's not normal. They also might think that the amount of energy that they have is the amount of energy that everybody has because they haven't ever experienced having more. They may think that their digestion issues can't be solved or improved because they literally can't remember not having them, right? It's almost become a part of who they are and what they expect. I remember when I was in grade 8 or 9, I think, I finally got contacts so I could essentially see for the first time while playing sports, and it literally changed the game for me. And up until that point, I was playing hockey, basketball, football, soccer, all the sports with super impaired vision. So when I got contacts, it was like a whole nother world opened up. I could not believe the difference. Turns out seeing in sports is important, but I assumed that's just what everybody's vision was like because that's what my vision had always been like. So there are things that we know that we know. So I know that the world is round and I know that I know that. There are things that we know that we don't know. So I'm aware that I don't know how to build a rocket to go to the moon. Clearly don't know how to do that. There are also things that we're aware of, but we don't necessarily actually know how they work. So I might be aware that I feel so much better when I've slept enough, but I don't actually know the physiological processes and how they work in my body that have me feel better after a great night's sleep, nor do I need to in order to reap the benefits. And then finally, there are things that we don't know that we don't know. And I alluded to an example of this before around not knowing how great you can feel via healthful nutrition. Because if you've never given a really healthful eating approach a go, it's just a feeling that you've never experienced. So how would you know, right? Now, having said that, it can be tough to motivate yourself to eat more healthfully for the first time because, again, you don't know how great you can feel because you don't know what you don't know. And we like to know what we're getting into. And that's why we love recommendations and reviews from people for things like restaurants and hotels. I mean, TripAdvisor is a massive website. There are entire businesses built on reviewing and recommending restaurants, hotels, Airbnbs, all sorts of stuff like that. So you might be thinking at this point, well, fuck, Marcus, you're on a bit of a tangent here. You started talking about treat meals. Now you're chatting about hotel reviews. All of this stuff ties together because we are adaptation machines. And when you don't know anything other than what you've had up until this point, anything outside of that is in the realm of something that you don't know that you don't know. So this episode is meant to sort of be a gentle push to step outside of your box a little bit. It might not necessarily be eating more healthfully. Obviously, I'd highly recommend that because A, you're interested in health because you're listening to this podcast, and B, this is an area where I know what I know, so I'm aware of the payoffs that you can get via healthful eating. But it may be something like traveling to a new country or taking up a new language or joining a sports team. Like if you've never actually been a part of a team sport, you've only played solo sports like, golf and wrestling and gymnastics or something, how do you know that maybe you don't like team sports if you haven't actually tried a team sports? And even if you're in your, say, 30s, 40s, and 50s, give it a go. It's not too late. Go have fun. So that is the general reasoning behind why when you switch to a more healthful eating approach, when you mix in a treat meal or two, that you have that sort of reaction to it. You're working with a clean slate. It's the dirty windshield effect, but I wanted to tie it in with a larger concept because I think that it sort of branches out into different areas of life, and I thought it would be helpful for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you're interested in personalized one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design, you can click the link in the show notes below, or you can head over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Also, follow me up on Instagram at N1Fitness for health info on the daily, as well as Facebook at Marcus Sadu and the N1 Fitness page. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and I will catch you on the next episode. See ya.